quite a few months now since I reviewed the Sony Action Camera, the AS10, and since then there have been quite a few changes. There's been new mounting options, there's been new accessories, there's also been new firmware, so I thought it's time for a video update. Now, when I reviewed the Sony AS10 back in January, I think it was, I compared it against the HD Hero 3 White Edition. Now, the reason I compared those two is because they were the two cheapest models in the ranges of each respective manufacturer. Now, I got a lot of weird comments under the video reviews. A lot of people say, why didn't I review the Black Edition HD Hero 3? It's so much better than the white. Well, the reason is because the video review was of the White Edition. I'd bought the white, I haven't got a black, how am I going to review it? And also, if nobody reviews the white, how will anyone know how it performs? It's a bit like when I reviewed my car. My car's a Toyota IQ, so I reviewed that. I didn't review a Toyota GT86 because I didn't own one. I'd only got an IQ, so that's what I reviewed. Same with these action cameras. Now, if you go on a current catalogue, high street store, internet, website thingamajig, current price is £200 for a HD Hero 3 White, also £200 for a Sony AS15, the model up from mine, while the GoPro HD Hero 3 Black Edition is £360. So you're not really comparing like for like if you're comparing a £200 camera against a £360 camera, now are you? Now, since I got the Sony Action Camera, I've also got quite a few of the official accessories for it. Now, I paid full price for some of these, but quite a few of them I also got off eBay at heavily discounted rates. Now, in addition to the AS10, I've also gone and bought the Sony AS15. Since I got all those accessories, I thought I might as well go and get the AS15 as well. And I've been experimenting with how you mount them onto motorcycle helmets and things. So I'm going to show you my solution in the end for mounting the camera to my bike, because in the previous video I hadn't really figured that out. I've reviewed this thing already, this sort of Handycam aka LU1 attachment which turns the camera into a little video camera. I've also reviewed this handlebar mount, that's in another video as well. You can find these on my channel. I'm not going to go into detail about these things because they're just spares for the things that came inside the original box. However, I am going to talk about these two head mounts. I've already talked about the VCT GM1 in the previous video, but I didn't really describe it in too great a detail, so I'm going to show you that again here, and then I'm going to talk about the other one. There's some specs on the side of this one to show you how big it is, how much it weighs, all that kind of stuff. This is what's inside the box. You get a kind of big, thick, elastic strap, and then this mount here. That's got a tripod screw at the bottom and then a rubber sort of bit at the bottom as well. And on this side, that square there, that grey square, that's rubber as well. That would rest against the side of a helmet. Now, it attaches the camera when it's in its case because it uses a tripod hole in the bottom to screw into. The camera can go either way around in this, but that's what it looks like. Now, the idea of this is it's supposed to be sort of for skiing and things. You've got an elasticated strap, like I mentioned. You can adjust that as well. But it's a bit too heavy to just put around your head, a bit too sort of large, which is where the other thing comes in. Now, you can unclip this here and take the strap out that comes with it, because the idea is, of course, it attaches to big goggles, like this skiing goggles, and you clip it on the side there. Of course, I don't really go skiing, so what I thought, I might peel the big square off and stick it to the side of a motorcycle helmet with some sort of double-sided sticky tape, but then I changed my mind on that because I thought it didn't really have enough movement in it in case I got it sort of pointed in the wrong place. Now, the BLT HB1 headband mount, that's a new one. This strap mounts the camera without using its waterproof case, therefore of course it's not waterproof, but it's also quite a bit lighter, as you can see from the specs on the side here. Now, inside the box for this one, you get this plastic sort of mounting cage and this elasticated strap. The strap is quite a bit thinner than the one that came with the other mount, and of course it's adjustable as well. The same piece of grey sponge square of rubber stuff is on here, but on this one it's kind of rounded so that it fits to the side of the head better. You can also move the camera back and forth like that, or tighten it up if you want it to remain rigid. To get into it, you undo the yellow clip. It clips open like this. Now, you put the camera inside this cradle thing. If you could put it that way, but that means you can't press the buttons on the side or see the screen, so I think it really has to go in this way. When you close it up, it's a nice firm click, it feels nice and solid. But one thing to bear in mind about this is that even though the camera isn't in the waterproof case, you still can't access the microphone hole on the bottom, unfortunately, because it's covered up. So I think we can agree that it doesn't look particularly cool. In fact, it looks a bit ridiculous. the headband that's on here has to be quite low on the head, just above the eyebrows, so that the camera points straight like this. If I was to sort of put it somewhere where it feels a little bit more comfortable, like up there for example, the camera's sort of pointing upwards, so that's probably not ideal. The camera does have this movement on it. You can move it around the strap like this, which might help you sort of position it in various places, but you can't tighten it up. It does seem to move quite freely, so I can imagine if you were sort of moving about on a skateboard or something, it could sort of swing around on its strap, unless you put the strap really tight on your head, but then you're going to end up with some ridiculous band. But, however, all that being said, this is going to be very useful for me making my other videos, because I can put it on my head here and film something while I'm using both hands to demonstrate it. And of course you're going to get that nice wide angle view of it. So I'm going to find this very useful, but I don't know if a sort of sports person or a skateboarder or something would really like it. I don't know, it's a little bit too bulky, I think, for them. Now, one of my comments when I reviewed both these cameras or compared them was that the Sony was harder to mount to things because of its shape, as well as the fact, of course, it had less mounting options. Now, I've tried putting the camera on the top of my motorcycle helmet, and to be honest, it looks ridiculous and you feel like a fool. So I really wanted it on the side there. But I was trying to figure out how to do this. Of course, it might vary depending on what your motorcycle helmet is, but it doesn't really fit very well on mine. What I was trying to do was use the clip that came with it like this, but instead of screwing it to the bottom of the case, actually put something between the tripod hole and the tripod screw, something like this, which is a kind of articulated joint. The idea behind this, in my head anyway, was that I was going to create a right angle so that I could put the sticky thing on the side of the helmet there, and then have the camera mounted on top of the screw there. Seems like a good idea, doesn't it? But it didn't really work. I could never get this working properly. When you try and use a joint like this, however much you tighten it up, unfortunately, those ball joints, you can't really tighten them and they just go loose again after a bit of vibration. So this isn't the way to do it. But I'm still thinking that if you could get a right angle like that, that would be perfect, at least an adjustable one anyway. I've tried a few other things. I got some sort of mounts here that I was trying. This one is off my Liquid Image Ego, which seems to almost work, but again, I wasn't too happy with it. I thought it might be better upside down and then flip the video. But in the end, I just went with good old-fashioned Velcro, or at least industrial strength Velcro, on the side of the helmet and on the side of the case, and stuck the two together. Now that kind of worked. As you can see, there's quite a bit of helmet in view on the left-hand side, and there's nothing I can do about this. This is the 120-degree angle of view. But it's okay, but you are missing anything that happens on the left. You can only really see the stuff on the right, which is a bit annoying. There's also another issue that started presenting itself after a while. You'll notice it now on the screen. It's starting to get misty. That's because the case, the Sony case, has a tendency to fog up when it's cold because the camera gets hot and there's nowhere for the heat to escape to, so it mists up the glass lens on the front. So what I did, I bought another case and just drilled some holes in the side of it. Now I know this is really basic, but it works. The wind gets in or out or whatever, stops it misting up, it's fine. But I never managed to get over the problem of having the helmet in view at the side of the image there. I wasn't happy with that, so I needed to find somewhere else to mount the camera. And after a bit of hunting, I managed to find somewhere. Here it is on my bike. What I've done is I've put it on top of the brake fluid reservoir. Now, of course, this isn't going to work on all bikes, but it fits there perfectly on mine. As you can see here, just squeeze it out and just pull it out, and that's where the clip remains, and the camera just slides off like that. I also added one of these things, which is a tether. That's to stop it falling off the bike in case something goes wrong. The sticky back GoPro tethers, as you can see here, there's a little bit of string goes through that loop. I've attached that to the arm of the mounting plate rather than the loop on top of the camera, because of course I want to be able to take the camera case off the bike rather than leave it dangling from the bike. So that's why I've got it in the arm. One other thing I had to do to get it to fit, I've got a better picture of this inside the garage. You can see the two screws there. The right one I couldn't get to unless I took one of the arms off the mount, but that doesn't make any difference. It's just so I can get into that reservoir if I need to. Now let's clip it onto the bike here again and go off for a bit of a ride to show you what it looks like. Oh, I'll also show you, look how close it comes to the windshield there. It's incredibly close, but I measured it perfectly just to get it exactly right. Didn't want it sort of banging into it if I had to do a full lock turn. Now, we're going out for a ride. One thing that's interesting about this, I've got the new firmware installed on the camera. That records at 1080p 60. Now, of course, you can't watch it at 1080p 60 on YouTube because they don't have that format playable through the website. I also can't edit in it either. I had to edit down to 1080p 30, so it seems a bit pointless really, doesn't it? And to be honest, it kind of is. Although I have got a clip of this on my website if you want to try it yourself. You can download it and try playing it back. But it really is a bit of a resource hog, and I don't know if it's worth it. I'm quite happy with 1080p 30, that looks fine to me. This looks alright as well though. And of course I've now mounted the camera in the right place. As you can see, it looks brilliant. I've done a little bit of a crop here, so the windshield is just out of shot on the left hand side, but you can see everything that you need to, and it looks great. So I've managed to find this solution for me. You'll have to hunt around a bit for your own solution if you get one of these cameras, but mine works fine. Also, if you do get one of these cases and you don't want to drill holes in it, but you get that misting up issue, you've got some options. You can get the Action Cam anti-fog sheets. Sony sell those, so obviously they know there's a bit of an issue there, but you don't have to get those either. They also sell a couple of different doors for the camera, one of which lets a bit of air in, I think. And there's also one for underwater, so that it takes better underwater images. Talking of accessories, you've got batteries and battery chargers. There's a surfboard mount as well, if you're into that kind of thing. A wrist strap. There's even a dog mount now. And then they also have done a bit of a ball head thing like I showed earlier on, so obviously they think that might be an idea as well. Now this is the one I'm really interested in, the skeleton frame. This is a new one that isn't out yet at the time of recording, coming out soon. The idea of this is the camera goes in it and can be mounted from the top, bottom or side, therefore stuck to the side of a helmet. Also, it's one of these non-waterproof cradles, so that means you can access the microphone hole in the bottom of the camera, but of course it means it's not waterproof. But it's the only case that they do where you can access the microphone. Now the idea is the camera goes in it, you can look here, upside down, left, right, whichever way you want to put it, and then you put one of these bits in, so you can have it so it mounts from the top or the bottom, and therefore the camera can be pretty much put whichever way you want it. So that's something that I'm looking forward to coming out. I think that's going to be quite useful, and I'll probably stick one of those on the side of my helmet again, give it another try, see if I can get it mounted properly this time. But you're not going to restrict yourself just to Sony mounts. You can also use the GoPro ones as well, because there is a bit of a way of sort of fiddling it. If you get a GoPro mount and you get the GoPro sort of clip thing that fits into the mount as well, then you've got to find a way to get that to the tripod hole on the Sony case. Now there are people out there that sell just that thing. It connects the Sony to the GoPro mount using the tripod screw. Now I haven't got one of those. I ended up getting a movie mount, which is for the movie action camera. Pulled it apart, so I just need that bit there to connect to the GoPro part here. So you just get the sort of two legs there, push them into the hinge, I suppose it is, put the screw through the middle of it all. It doesn't quite fit perfectly. It's a little bit sort of tight. It's not. You can tell it's not designed for it, but it does work. As you can see there, I've now got a tripod screw on that, so I can screw that into the bottom of the Sony Action camera, and now we've got it on the bottom of a GoPro mount, which means we can attach it to any of the GoPro clips like that. It's not perfect though, this. I don't think this is a brilliant solution because it still rotates a bit too easily. However much you tighten it up, it's just going to rotate because it doesn't have anything that goes in that second hole there, which would stop it moving around. So not perfect, but what I'm really saying is you can have a play around. Because you've got that tripod screw hole there, you can try all sorts of different things. One criticism that I had of the AS10 when I reviewed it at Christmas was that the image clarity was rather soft on the lens. If we look at this shot that I took at the time here, look on the right hand side at the writing on the white background, it's very hard to make that out. Well, the AS15, I took it along to the same spot, and as you can see, it's an awful lot sharper. And that isn't because the AS15 has a better lens than the AS10, it just means my AS10 must have been a bit faulty. So I'm glad to make that correction now. The only real problem that I've had with these cameras is to do with the memory cards. You'll see the memory card slot there. It's designed to be used with M2 cards, Sony's M2 cards, or micro SD cards. As a result, with it being a multi-purpose socket, it doesn't seem to sort of fit the card very well. You can see it there, it's kind of diagonal, and quite often I'll plug a card in, it'll say no card on the display, and I'll have to plug it in again and again quite a few times until it eventually recognises it, which is pretty irritating. I think it's just because I've used that sort of multi-purpose socket. If it were just designed for micro SDs, it would probably fit a lot better. Now in my previous video I did mention that I saw this green light in here, and I thought, what's that green light? That's a bit odd. And of course we realised after I'd made the video that it was actually just a hologram reflecting off these lights here, but it does do a pretty good job of pretending to be a green light. Of course I put that in the annotations on the video and in the answers to the questions and on my blog and in the video description, and yet daily someone will say, hey, you know what, that's not a green light, that's a hologram. Well, the thing is, please read the annotations or don't switch them off, because they do actually have some useful information in them sometimes. Now another thing, the AS15 and the AS10 both have new firmware, so I'm going to show you what that looks like on the menus of the camera, but I also want to tell you that the remaining section of this video is all just me going through the menus of the camera, showing you the different settings and things. If you're not going to be interested in this, I suggest you bail now. Right, I just want to quickly talk you through the menus on the camera, because this is the AS15 model. The previous one I reviewed was the AS10, so there's a couple more options in here, but also I've got the new firmware on here, which means that there's a couple more things in there as well because of that. So let's get it switched on first of all. So we'll just get into this, just turn the camera on. Right, so we're in movie mode first of all. Notice 120 degrees there. We can fit 2 hours 10 minutes on the camera. That icon there tells us we're in movie mode. It's in 1080p 60 mode. Anti-shake is on, and that's the battery power that we've got in there. So that's all the information that comes on the screen when you switch it on. Now of course if we press the button on the end here, it starts recording. You can see it's counting up there, and the red light comes on the end here as well. If I press the button to stop, red light goes off and the display goes back to where we were. Next mode along, if we press next, that is the photo mode, interval photos. Every 5 seconds it'll take a 120 degree photo. That's how many it can fit on the memory card. If we just test that out, we'll press it now. It takes one straight away. You see it's taken one photo. It's waiting for the next 5 seconds. And there you go, that's the second photo. It'll just keep doing that until you press stop on the end here. Next mode along, setup, that's the setup mode. I'll show you all the options in the setup in a moment. That's quite complicated. We'll just cruise past it for the moment. Send is if we want to send anything from the camera to the phone application, the smartphone application, and we would go in this menu, we'd press that button there, it starts preparing to send it, it turns the Wi-Fi on, and basically becomes a little hotspot waiting for your phone to attach to it, and then you can transfer data across off the card onto your phone. It's rather slow to do that, but if you're out in a field and you want to see the footage you've just shot, it's pretty much the only way you're going to get the footage off this onto a smartphone and be able to view it when you're out and about. Right, we'll switch that off. We have to press that button there to close it, and there we go. Right, back to that. Next one along is play. And the play menu would let you play something. If we had a display, it says no display. We've got to attach an HDMI lead to the bottom there for that to work. So those are your modes, other than power off, of course. So we've got movie, interval, setup, send, play, and power off. So let's get into that setup mode, because that's the complex one. Again, you've got to select everything on the end here and move back and forward through them here. First one is video, and then it goes steady, angle, scene, lapse, remote, auto off, beep, date, USB power, reset, format, back, and video again. So that's it all round in a loop. Now anytime you select anything in this setup menu and you choose it, it will throw you right back to the beginning where you first were. It'll take you out of the setup menu. So if you wanted to choose various things in one go, maybe change the angle and change the resolution or something, you're going to have to pop in and out of this setup menu a couple of times, which is a little bit irritating. But we'll go into video first of all. This is a new mode, 1080p 60, which they call PS, which is the top mode in the camera for shooting video. We can move to the next one, which is 1080p 30, which they call HQ, 720p 30 standard, 720p 60 frames a second for slow, 720p 120 frames a second for super slow. The reason those are called slow and super slow is that you can slow them down and the footage will look good as sort of slow motion footage. But of course they're not actually really shot in slow motion. Well, that one isn't. It's a 720p 60, so you can show it at 720p 60 if you want, and it's at normal speed. VGA is the next one along, 640 by 480 at 30 frames a second. Then we're back to the beginning. So that was all the video modes. Steady shot, well, we can have steady shot on, which is a little hand up there. Steady shot off, the hand's gone, and back. That's your options. Steady shot only works at 120 degrees mode. It doesn't work in 170 degree mode. Angle, these are your angles, 120 degree, as you can see, steady shot, shaky hand thing there. If we go 170 degree, no shaky hand, which kind of gives it away a little bit, and back. Now I always leave it in 120 degree because I like the steady shot, and I think 120 degree gives you plenty of angle. Scene, this is a new menu, normal or water. If you're shooting underwater, I think you select water and it changes the colours a little bit so it looks better in the camera. I don't really go underwater, so I don't really know much about that one. Lapse, this is how long it's going to take between each photo. Time lapse in a way, so 5 seconds is what we've got it set to at the moment. Our other options are 10 seconds, 30 seconds or 60 seconds between each photo. Remote, if we want to control the camera over Wi-Fi, we've got to switch this on. Now, of course, this basically doesn't really mean remote, it means Wi-Fi. If we switch it on, the Wi-Fi comes on, the camera becomes a mini hotspot, and then the mobile phone application can connect to it. Of course, if you leave this on, you're going to burn through that battery because basically you're turning on a little Wi-Fi hotspot. So let's just go into the remote here. We've got off at the moment, or on. So I'm going to leave it off because of what I just said. I like to have more battery life, but if you do want to use it, that's where you switch it on. It's best to only switch it on when you really need it. Auto off, how long the camera's going to take before it switches off. That's 60 seconds with no action, or your other choice, you've only got one other choice, 10 seconds. So pick between those two. Beep, now this is a new menu, you can either have the beep on or off. Strangely enough, there's another option in here, I'll just show you. We've got on, which is what we've got at the moment, silent, fair enough, and we've got off as well. So I don't know what the difference between silent and off is, no doubt if I read the instructions I'll find out, but basically if you can turn the beep off if you want. Date is where you change the time and date and things, I'm not going to go into that menu. USB power, if you want the camera to be charged when you attach it to your computer, then you turn that on. Or if you prefer the camera to actually transfer data to your computer when you plug it into your computer to your USB port, you leave it off. At least I think that's how it works. Reset would reset all the settings in the camera. Format would format the card in the camera. Always wise to format cards in the camera rather than format them in your computer. I mean, you can format them in your computer if you want, but put them in the camera, format it here. At least you know it's going to be formatted to the correct format that the camera recognises. And back takes you back to the beginning. So that was all the menus in the setup menu there, and we saw all these other ones before that go around in a loop here. So there you go, that's pretty much every option in the camera. And to wrap up, I just want to show you the Wi-Fi functions, because this wasn't something that I could show you with the AS10 camera because it's a feature unique to the AS15. Get into the Wi-Fi on your phone, in my case I'm using this iPhone here, get the thing in send mode, press the button on the end, it says prep. Now we're waiting for the Wi-Fi to turn up on the iPhone screen as a hotspot. You'll see it there at the top, so we can click on that. And we've just got to wait for it to connect. I've already got the password set up, so we don't have to put that in this time. So we've got a tick there now, we're on. So now we go into the application that's downloadable from the App Store, the Sony application, which is called Play Memories. And wait for that to connect. You see connected on screen there. Just wait for it to come up with the list of files that are on the camera. These are all the video files and photos and things that are on the camera. We can put a tick next to any of these and copy them across to the phone. But there's a problem, it does take forever. For some reason, copying over Wi-Fi is incredibly slow between these two things, so only really useful in an emergency, not something you'd want to do an awful lot, especially with massive HD files. However, one feature that's more useful is the remote control feature. So again, go into remote, switch that on, and now we can do a live view of the camera, which is very useful in getting the camera pointed in the right direction. There's a bit of lag on it, but a very small amount. It's actually pretty responsive. Now, unlike some other action cameras that I've reviewed, in Wi-Fi mode, when you press record on the application, the connection stays live. It doesn't drop the connection, which means you can see the record light lit on the back of the camera and the record showing on the screen, but we've still got live video coming from the camera, although I think the frame rate drops down quite a bit. If we press stop, the camera of course stops recording. Now at the bottom right here we can switch between movie mode and photo mode, which is of course the interval photo. So if we click on that and press the record button, it'll start taking those interval photos every 5 seconds or whatever you've got it set to, until you press stop to stop it recording them. Now if I go back into movie mode and then press that little spanner at the bottom left, that gets into the setup menus. Now I need to point out that these menus were recorded, or this section was recorded, before I'd updated the firmware. Therefore all the menu options aren't in here that will be available on the new firmware. Things like 1080p 60 mode, sound on and off, and that underwater mode. But I'd imagine those will be there in the new firmware. You can of course turn your phone sideways to get that landscape view, so you've got a bigger screen image, when you've still got the buttons on the right there, obviously to start and stop the recording as before. So in the month since I did my review of the Sony A-S10, quite a few things have changed, mostly for the better, although one thing that's changed is you can't get an A-S10 anymore. If you want the Sony Action camera in the UK, you've got to get the A-S15 now, which isn't such a bad deal because of course that Wi-Fi is actually pretty useful, and it's come down in price quite a bit as well. So for those people that didn't understand, this was a video about the Sony Action cameras, nothing else. And for those people that did understand, thanks for watching.